There are moments when the weight of the pain feels unbearable, when every breath feels like a battle. I've been in that place, trapped in a darkness so dense that the mere thought of getting out of bed was terrifying. It's not easy to admit, but there were days when I questioned whether it was worth continuing. Life around me carried on as usual, while I was slowly drowning in thoughts that crushed any hope of recovery. No one noticed how broken I was inside, and that, perhaps, was the most painful part.
I'm Rachel Harper. Today, I'm sharing a story that highlights the deep struggles many face behind closed doors. This story is based on real events, but some names and details have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved. If this story resonates with you, please consider sharing, liking, and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. Now let's get into today's story.
My name is Lucas, and I'm 35 years old. I work as a software developer at a major tech company in São Paulo. From a young age, I was always passionate about technology and innovation. My career developed in a promising way, and I quickly rose through the ranks, securing prominent positions in renowned companies. My life seemed perfect on the outside: a good job, a loving family, and loyal friends. But inside, I was fighting an invisible enemy. Depression crept into my life stealthily, without warning. It was right after I had been promoted to project manager, a role that demanded a lot from me, both mentally and physically. I constantly felt exhausted, but I chalked it up to the workload. However, I realized something was wrong when I began feeling an immense emptiness, a lack of purpose I couldn't explain. Small setbacks became insurmountable mountains, and I started losing interest in things that once brought me joy. The trigger for my depression was the loss of a close friend in a car accident. He was my confidant, someone with whom I shared my dreams and frustrations. His death was a devastating blow, and I couldn't cope with the pain and grief. I began isolating myself from others, withdrawing from my family and friends. Even the simplest daily tasks became overwhelming, and the thought of living this way terrified me. I remember one specific night that marked the beginning of my plunge into depression. I was alone in my apartment, surrounded by piles of work documents, with the TV on, but not paying attention to anything. Suddenly, I was overcome by an overwhelming sense of despair and sadness. Tears started streaming down my face uncontrollably. In that moment, I knew I needed help, but I didn't know how or where to find it. That's how my journey to confront depression began, a path filled with ups and downs, moments of anguish, but also small triumphs. In the next sections, I'll share more about this journey, the challenges I faced, and the strategies I found to overcome this debilitating state. The first symptoms of depression appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly. At first, it was a constant feeling of fatigue, as if I had never rested enough. Soon, this evolved into a loss of interest in activities that had once brought me joy. I used to love programming as a hobby, playing soccer with my friends on weekends, and even reading sci-fi books. Suddenly, none of that seemed to matter. I felt a deep emptiness, as if life had lost its colors and meaning. Negative thoughts began creeping into my mind, one after the other. I found myself thinking I would never be good enough, that my professional success was just luck, and that soon everyone would see through my incompetence. Anxiety took over, making even the simplest tasks at work feel daunting. I procrastinated, fearing that even the smallest mistake could unravel the career I had worked so hard to build. My work performance started to suffer. Projects that I used to complete with ease were now endlessly delayed. My interactions with coworkers became strained. I avoided meetings, feeling like I had nothing valuable to contribute. My superiors noticed the change, and at one point, I was called in for a conversation about my productivity. I made excuses about going through a tough time, but the truth was, I didn't know how to explain what was happening to me. At home, things were no different. I began avoiding family gatherings and social events. My conversations with friends became rare and superficial. Of course, they noticed the change. Some tried to help, inviting me out or just offering to talk. But most of the time, I declined, making excuses or simply ignoring the messages. The loneliness, which at first felt like a choice, soon turned into a heavy burden that was hard to carry. My family, especially my parents, grew concerned. My mom, a loving and perceptive woman, immediately noticed that something was wrong. She tried to lift my spirits with homemade meals and conversations about my childhood, but I just couldn't respond in the way she hoped. My dad, on the other hand, approached the situation more practically, suggesting I take a vacation or find a new hobby. But nothing seemed to help. Their frustration was evident, which only deepened my feelings of guilt and worthlessness. Self-care was one of the first things to fall apart. My sleep patterns became completely erratic. There were nights when I couldn't sleep at all, followed by days when I couldn't get out of bed. Eating became irregular. Sometimes I'd go the entire day without eating, and other times I'd resort to fast food in an attempt to fill the emotional void. The lack of energy and motivation caused me to neglect even basic hygiene at times. The worst part was the emotional isolation. Despite being surrounded by people who loved and cared for me, I felt completely alone. Words of comfort and encouragement felt distant, as if they were coming from a place I no longer belonged to. Depression had built an invisible wall between me and the world, and I couldn't find a way to tear it down. Those first few months were the hardest. Life seemed like an endless cycle of gray days and sleepless nights. Yet, it was during this dark period that I began to realize the urgent need to seek help. I knew I couldn't go on like this, and that something needed to change, but I had no idea where to start. That was the first spark that eventually led me to begin the path to recovery. The most intense episodes of depression were like living nightmares. There were days when I simply couldn't get out of bed. The sense of hopelessness was crushing, and it felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. The dominant thought was that nothing I did would make a difference. I was trapped in an endless cycle of pain and anguish. One of the most memorable episodes happened over a weekend. I had planned to spend the day with friends at a barbecue, something I always loved doing. But when the day came, the mere thought of leaving the house felt unbearable. I was paralyzed, staring at the ceiling, feeling completely powerless. Messages from friends started coming in, asking where I was, but I couldn't bring myself to reply. I ended up turning off my phone and hiding from the world. The guilt of disappointing my friends only worsened my state. Social isolation became a constant. There were weeks when I didn't see or speak to anyone outside of work. The few interactions I had were superficial and mechanical. I avoided family gatherings, parties, and even work meetings. The loneliness, which initially seemed like a choice, soon became a prison. I felt like no one could understand what I was going through, and at the same time, I didn't want to burden anyone. The impact on my work was devastating. I missed important deadlines, made careless mistakes, and my productivity plummeted. I remember a crucial presentation I had to give to an important client. I had prepared everything in advance, but on the day of the presentation, anxiety took over. My hands shook, my voice faltered, and I couldn't focus. The presentation was a disaster, and I felt like I had completely failed. The shame and fear of the consequences haunted me for weeks. My physical health also suffered. Sleepless nights became frequent, and when I did sleep, the nightmares were constant. My eating habits were chaotic. I alternated between long periods without eating and episodes of binge eating. The lack of physical exercise only worsened my feelings of lethargy and constant exhaustion. In the early stages of crisis, my attempts to deal with depression were ineffective. I tried ignoring my feelings, believing that if I didn't think about them, they would go away. I threw myself into work, hoping that staying busy would distract me from the pain. But this only led to more stress and burnout. I also occasionally turned to alcohol, trying to numb the pain, but that only made things worse, creating a vicious cycle of self-destruction. Dealing with these moments was extremely difficult. In many cases, I simply couldn't. I was paralyzed, unable to take any action. Small tasks like taking a shower or preparing a meal felt like monumental challenges. The crises left me in a state of total apathy, where nothing seemed worth the effort. There were also moments when the negative thoughts became so overwhelming that I considered giving up on everything. These thoughts were terrifying and constant, and I felt completely helpless. The idea of seeking help crossed my mind, but the shame and fear of stigma kept me from taking any steps forward. These were the darkest moments of my life, where depression truly showed its cruelest side. Each day was a battle to survive, to keep existing, even when everything inside me was screaming to give up. It was a time when I realized the severity of my situation and the urgent need to find a way out, though I still didn't know how or where to seek help. The crisis, however, also planted the seed of change. The pain and despair I felt forced me to look at my life in a way I never had before. I knew I had to do something, anything, to try and find my way back to the light. And that realization, though painful, was the first step on my journey to recovery. The moment I realized I needed help was a mix of relief and desperation. I had hit rock bottom, unable to see a way out. It was an especially tough night. I was sitting on the floor of my living room, surrounded by empty bottles and piles of unfinished work documents. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the person I had become. The mental and physical exhaustion was unbearable. I knew that if I didn't do something, the situation would only get worse. The idea of seeking professional help had always been there, but I resisted for many reasons. The fear of stigma was one of the biggest obstacles. I grew up in a family where talking about mental health was practically taboo. There was an underlying belief that emotional struggles were a sign of weakness, something that should be overcome with sheer willpower. On top of that, I was afraid that admitting my condition could hurt my career. Working in a competitive and fast-paced company made me believe that showing any vulnerability could be seen as a sign of incapacity. The first step was opening up to someone I trusted. My older sister, Clara, had always been a source of unconditional support. In a moment of desperation, I called her, and for the first time, I unloaded everything I was going through. Clara was understanding and never judged me. She listened patiently, and by the end of our conversation, she suggested I seek professional help. Her support was crucial in helping me seriously consider that possibility. I decided to schedule an appointment with a psychologist. The first sessions were difficult. I was reluctant to open up fully and still had doubts about whether this would actually work. The psychologist, Dr. Eduardo, was patient and empathetic. He explained that depression wasn't a weakness, but a medical condition that needed treatment. This helped ease some of the guilt and shame I had been carrying. Through therapy, I began to better understand my feelings and the triggers that contributed to my depression. Dr. Eduardo taught me coping techniques and strategies to deal with negative thoughts. Although the process was slow, I started to notice small improvements. The weekly sessions became a safe space where I could express my fears and anxieties without judgment. Alongside therapy, Dr. Eduardo suggested I see a psychiatrist to assess whether I might need medication. The thought of taking antidepressants scared me. I was afraid of the side effects and the stigma associated with using medication for mental health. However, after much reflection and encouragement from Clara, I decided to follow Dr. Eduardo's advice. The consultation with the psychiatrist, Dr. Mariana, was eye-opening. She explained that medication could be a valuable tool in helping stabilize my mood and make therapy more effective. I started taking antidepressants, and although the first few days were tough due to side effects, over time, I began to notice gradual improvement. The support from friends was also crucial during this process. Although I had distanced myself from many of them, those who stayed by my side showed immense understanding and patience. My best friend Pedro was one of those people. He always offered to accompany me to medical appointments and encouraged me to keep going with the treatment, even on the days when I wanted to quit. The journey to take care of my mental health was filled with challenges, but each step, no matter how small, represented progress. Accepting that I needed help and committing to treatment were crucial in starting my recovery. Over time, I came to realize that seeking help wasn't a sign of weakness, but rather of courage and self-care. This initial phase of seeking help marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Although there was still a long road ahead, I finally felt like I was taking control of my mental health. And for the first time in a long time, a small flame of hope began to burn inside me. As time went on, I began to develop and adopt various tools and strategies that helped me cope day to day and manage my depression more effectively. Every small victory represented an important step toward recovery, and these moments of relief showed me that it was possible to find light, even in the darkest of circumstances. One of the first things I learned in therapy was the importance of daily habits and routine. Establishing a regular routine helped create a sense of stability and predictability, which was essential in reducing anxiety. I started setting fixed times for waking up, eating, and going to bed. Small daily tasks, like making my bed or preparing a healthy breakfast, became rituals that gave me a sense of control and purpose. Self-care became a priority. I used to neglect my physical and mental health, but I began to understand that taking care of myself was essential for recovery. I adopted the habit of regular physical exercise, even if it was just a simple walk in the park. Physical activity not only improved my mood, but it also helped me relieve stress and anxiety. Additionally, I started paying more attention to my diet, avoiding junk food, and opting for more balanced and nutritious meals. Therapy remained a vital anchor during this period. Dr. Eduardo introduced various coping techniques, like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which helped me identify and challenge negative and distorted thoughts. One particularly useful technique was keeping a journal, where I wrote down my thoughts and feelings. This allowed me to track my progress and recognize negative thought patterns, helping me replace them with healthier perspectives. Another powerful tool was meditation and mindfulness practice. At first, I was skeptical about these practices, but with Dr. Eduardo's encouragement, I started exploring guided meditation techniques. Taking a few minutes each day to sit in silence, focus on my breathing, and be present in the moment helped me find calm and clarity amidst the chaos. Gradually, meditation became a daily practice that had a profoundly positive impact on my mental health. Discovering small moments of relief and improvement was transformative. I remember one specific day, after weeks of therapy and medication, when I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in a long time. I went to the park, sat on a bench, and watched the people around me, feeling an inner peace that had been foreign to me for so long. These moments, though small, were signs that recovery was possible and gave me the strength to keep fighting. Support groups also played a crucial role in my recovery. Joining a support group for people with depression showed me that I wasn't alone. Sharing experiences with others facing similar struggles was comforting and inspiring. The sense of community and mutual understanding provided emotional support I couldn't find anywhere else. Additionally, rediscovering hobbies and interests I had abandoned was essential to my recovery. I got back into programming for fun, exploring new projects that brought me satisfaction. I returned to reading science fiction and even started painting, an activity I had never tried before, but that I found to be incredibly therapeutic. These hobbies not only gave me a healthy escape from negative thoughts, but they also helped me reconnect with parts of myself I thought I had lost. The support of friends and family continued to be vital. Clara and Pedro, in particular, were pillars of strength and encouragement. They celebrated my small victories with me and were there to support me through the tough times. Feeling loved and supported made a huge difference in how I viewed depression and in my determination to overcome it. Through these learnings and coping strategies, I began to see depression in a new light. It was no longer an invincible enemy, but a condition that could be managed and overcome with the right tools and support. Each small step toward recovery reminded me that the journey, though difficult, was possible, and that there was hope on the horizon. One of the most significant moments of victory and overcoming came on a seemingly ordinary day, but it marked a big breakthrough for me. For weeks, I had been stuck in a cycle of fear and anxiety, unable to find the motivation to do simple things like leaving the house. The idea of facing the world outside felt terrifying and overwhelming. However, on a sunny Saturday, I decided to step out of my comfort zone. I took a shower, got dressed, and with a lot of effort, I went out for a walk in the park. The walk itself wasn't long, but just being outdoors, feeling the sun on my face and seeing other people living their lives was a refreshing experience. It was the first time in a long while that I felt a spark of normalcy and enjoyment. When I returned home, I felt a small but meaningful sense of accomplishment. That small gesture of leaving the house was a milestone in my recovery journey. I realized that, while depression was still present, I had the ability to face it, even if it was one step at a time. That progress, though slow, was a sign that things could get better. Each small victory, like that walk, built upon a solid foundation of resilience and hope. Another moment of victory was when I started enjoying programming again. I had always loved creating and solving problems through coding, but depression had robbed me of that passion. One day, I decided to open my laptop and work on a personal project I had abandoned months earlier. At first, it was hard to focus, but gradually, I got absorbed in the process. Hours passed without me noticing, and by the end of the day, I felt immense satisfaction. The joy of creating something from scratch and seeing the final result reminded me of who I was before depression took hold. These moments were crucial in helping me realize that I was making progress, even if it was gradual. Every time I managed to leave the house, spend time with friends, or find joy in my hobbies, I felt a little stronger and more confident. These small triumphs showed me that, despite the ups and downs, recovery was possible. Reflecting on these moments of victory was a powerful experience. They taught me that recovering from depression isn't a straight line, but a journey full of small steps and achievements. Each little victory represented a light at the end of the tunnel, proof that I could overcome the challenges depression brought into my life. These moments also taught me to value and celebrate every bit of progress, no matter how small. I learned to be kinder to myself, to recognize and appreciate my efforts, and to understand that healing wasn't just about the destination. It was about the journey itself. Each small victory gave me the strength to keep going, to believe that life could be fulfilling again, and that I could find happiness once more. These victories, no matter how small they seemed, were fundamental in rebuilding my self-esteem and confidence. They showed me that I had the strength within me to fight depression, and that with the right support and strategies, I could keep moving forward toward a fuller and more satisfying life. Today, after going through numerous crises and moments of victory, I see my life from a new perspective. The journey has been long and challenging, but each experience taught me valuable lessons and helped me grow in ways I never imagined. Depression, despite its devastating nature, became a catalyst for change and self-discovery. Now I feel stronger and more resilient. While the fight against depression continues, I now have an arsenal of tools and strategies that help me face it more effectively. I've learned to recognize warning signs and take action before things spiral out of control. Therapy, medication, healthy habits, and the support of friends and family remain essential pillars of my well-being. Meditation and mindfulness have become essential parts of my daily routine. These moments of introspection help me maintain calm and clarity, even in times of stress. Regular exercise not only lifts my mood, but also gives me a sense of accomplishment and well-being. Programming, which was once just a passion, now serves as a creative outlet, allowing me to channel my energy in a productive way. The most important lesson I've learned is how to be kind to myself. I've come to understand that it's normal to have bad days, and that progress isn't always linear. Every step, no matter how small, is a victory and deserves to be celebrated. Recovery is a continuous process that requires patience and perseverance. I've learned to accept my imperfections and to understand that it's okay to need help. This process of self-compassion was critical to my recovery and continues to be a daily practice. For those struggling with depression, my message is one of hope and encouragement. I know how overwhelming depression can be, and I know how easy it is to feel lost and helpless. But I want you to know that recovery is possible. It may seem impossible right now, but small steps can lead to big changes. Here are a few pieces of advice that helped me along the way. First, seek professional help. Don't hesitate to reach out to a therapist or psychiatrist. Professional help is essential for understanding and treating depression properly. Build a support network. Friends, family, and support groups can offer the emotional support you need. Don't be afraid to open up and share your struggles. Establish healthy routines. Create a daily routine that includes healthy habits like balanced meals, physical exercise, and regular sleep schedules. Practice self-care. Make time for activities you enjoy and that make you feel good. This could include hobbies, meditation, reading, or anything else that brings you joy and peace. Be gentle with yourself. Recovery is a process, and it's normal to experience ups and downs along the way. Give yourself permission to make mistakes and celebrate every small achievement because each one is a step toward your well-being. Avoid isolation. Even when everything feels overwhelming, hold on to your social connections. The support of others can be a key factor in preventing depression from worsening. Educate yourself about depression. Understanding the condition can help demystify it and allow you to find more effective coping strategies. Finally, accept that asking for help is a sign of strength. Seeking support, whether through therapy or friends, is an act of courage and self-love. Looking back on my journey, I realized that depression, though painful, taught me to embrace my vulnerability and see that recovery is a possible path filled with valuable lessons. Even on the darkest days, hope is a powerful ally. Every small victory, every moment of joy, no matter how fleeting, is precious and deserves to be celebrated. Believe in your ability to overcome. The journey may be long, but you are not alone. With support, patience, and compassion, a full and satisfying life is within reach. Keep taking small steps. Each one moves you closer to the light that has always been waiting for you at the end of the tunnel. With all my gratitude, Lucas.
Now that we've reached the end of Lucas's inspiring story, his words remind us of the strength that can be found even in the darkest moments. The journey through depression is full of challenges, but every small step toward healing is a meaningful victory. If you face tough times or know someone going through them, remember that sharing your story can make all the difference. We want to hear from you. Leave your thoughts, experiences, or words of support in the comments. This space is yours, so together, we can create a community of compassion and solidarity. If this story resonated with you, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience, struggle, and hope. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Seeking help is a sign of strength, and every step, no matter how small, matters.